Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unnext News Radio podcast, your news source for all things unexplained. And now, here's your host for the Unnext News podcast, Margie Kay.
Welcome to Unnext News Radio. And if you'd like more information about me or about the websites, please visit unnextnews.com, unnextmedia.com, and margiekay.com. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Margie Kay. Today, my guest is Stephen Bassett. He's the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind the so-called UFO phenomenon. Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of formal disclosure by world governments of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He has given over 1,000 radio and television interviews, and PRG's advocacy work has been extensively covered by national and international media. In 2013, PRG produced a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. On November 5th, 2014, PRG launched a congressional hearing political initiative seeking the first hearings on Capitol Hill since 1968 regarding the extraterrestrial presence issue and working to see that issue included in the ongoing presidential campaign. Welcome to the program, Steve.
Margie, I think this is my first time doing your show, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is. We met a couple of times at big conferences. We met at the one in Lawrence in 2010 at the Oz UFO conference, where you did a fantastic presentation. And I know I've seen you at two or three others, but it's really good to have you on the show today.
That's very kind of you. Well, look, I didn't think so. I checked out your website when you contacted me, the UNX site, and wow, very impressive site. Your podcast is excellent. You've been doing it now for a good while. I'm glad we finally connected because I need to get the message out right now, and I think you're a leading spokesperson, and I'm glad to be with you. Well,
I sure am glad to have you on because you have been a leader in this movement, basically, in order to get the extraterrestrial idea out there that we are being visited and that it is being covered up by the government. And still today, even with the recent disclosures that have happened, let's just go right into that. What do you think that's all about? Why do you think the Navy and the Pentagon have allowed these recent things to come out to the public?
I'm glad you asked, because that's what I've been talking about. You are my 60th interview this year, believe it or not, since January 1. This is partially due to the rise of the podcast. Everybody has them. 10-year-old kids have got podcasts, I think, right now. Yeah. So I finally had to have one. So I started my podcast. Took a year. I finally got the introductory video up. And it's been several months. I haven't been able to get the first one after that. But I'm set up. I got a link, disclosurewire.org. I invite people to check out that first introductory podcast. I will be doing more, but I'm finally in the podcast world. Okay. Look, the message is fairly crisp. The truth embargo is in its 74th year. It started, I think, I like to start it with Roswell. You could start it when Roger Ramey gave the phony news conference to change the story. You could start the truth embargo when they pulled Mac Brazel off the street, held him for like 7, 8, 9 days, and convinced him it would be to his best effect if he would change his story and go along with the government, which he did. Got a nice truck, and then he moved. He left town. But whatever. It's in its 74th year. And guess what? It's about to end. Finally.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a long run. All right.
Yeah.
You and I both have, I think, a number of colleagues that didn't make it. Didn't make it to see this happen.
That's right.
And every time we lose one, I feel the pain. I actually have a section under, I think it's projects on my website called the In Memoriam, and where I am trying to chronicle as many of the key people in the field as possible with a link and all that. And I added one recently. So why is it ending? What is that tipped the scale and allowed us to cross the Rubicon, as I like to say?
Mm-hmm.
It started back in 2015 inside the Pentagon, primarily. I didn't know about it. I didn't have even a hint about it until I caught Tom DeLonge giving an interview to George Knapp in March of 2016, where he said something big was coming, and he talked about this and that. And I get, well, okay, I need to see more. Then he published this book called Secret Machines, which he said he would do. And I said, okay, maybe something going on here. And then we didn't hear anything. And then there was a huge WikiLeaks drop of emails from John Podesta's server that were stolen by some Russian hackers and given to Julian Assange.
Yes.
And I realized that it had been extensive contact with Podesta. Now I really knew something was going on. And I quickly figured it out, even before the election went down, that something had happened inside the military intelligence complex. They decided to make a bold move. They came up with a plan. The plan was in the works. The Democrats were the focus, not the Republicans. And that something that Secretary Clinton, as I had suspected for years, intended to disclose the ET presence once she got the White House. She was going to be the disclosure president.
Really?
She would call for the hearings. We'd go through that process, which we need to do. And then she would be the one, probably not, pretty quickly in her administration. And she would go down in history. I knew this because I know the whole history of the Clintons on this issue, going back to 1993. Her husband wanted to bring files out. He wanted to get this right. And the DOD basically just told him to go away. The Air Force created a $20 million study that was totally bogus about the mogul balloons. They put that out. In other words,
that was ridiculous.
It was. So her husband was embarrassed and undermined. He was attacked. He was impeached, all that stuff, partially because he was a threat to the truth embargo. When Lawrence Rockefeller approached him, he had to participate. He had to let him have his say. And that initiative went on for 3 years, and the military intelligence complex was watching it very closely, meaning Bill Clinton could do this. Any president could do it. I don't care what the DOD thinks about a president. The president has the power to send his people down to the DOD and say, you're going to show me these files. You're going to tell me everything I want to know, or I'm going to fire all of you. But no president has done that. But they could. They believe me, the DOD wasn't going to say, no, Mr. President. No. At that point, the jig is up. No president has done that.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because can't the presidents basically do whatever they want?
Yeah, they can do whatever they want, but they have to want to do it. And so far, no president has wanted to do it. They had reasons not to. Some were completely out of the loop. Others did not want to challenge the truth embargo. They felt it was appropriate policy. Carter clearly was somebody that wanted to go there. He tried to go there. He was stopped cold. All right. So yeah, but if they wanted to, they have the power to do it. But this policy, which has been entrenched for 7 decades, is a national security. It's legal. It's significant. The issue is profound. And so no president has been willing to go there. I think Hillary was going to go there. Okay. And she lost the election. What happened next was that the project that had been alluded to finally emerged in October of 2017. And we all know what that is. It was the oddly named To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science.
Mm-hmm.
It went public. It put up a website. It told us who was involved, who the team was, and launched a fundraising campaign for a public benefit corporation, raised a couple $1 million. Serious project, without question. And then people had to decide what is going on here. Well, I had the benefit of 20 years of following this issue and nothing else. And so I knew almost immediately what was going on. And what was going on was this, in a few words. Because of the intentions of Clinton to disclose, because the press jumped on the story, which I was behind in DC, working out of DC, and hundreds of articles were turning up in the press, it forced her and her husband and John Podesta and even Barack Obama to go on television talk shows, safe ones, not interviews with the New York Times, and actually start speaking to this issue. You remember, I know you do.
Oh, yeah. Never
happened before, ever. And so the articles started piling up, and she's saying this and she's saying that. And they saw this all developing in 2015, 16. And they realized, or actually 15 is when I think they started their plans, that she was going to disclose, and that was going to be a massive problem for the Department of Defense and all other agencies that have been dealing with the ET issue, because they knew exactly how that was going to go. The president, in this case Hillary Clinton, would facilitate getting the hearings that we have to have. Those hearings would take place. She would watch them along with the world. And at some point, the evidence would be compelling, and she would then confirm, yes, we've watched the evidence with you, and it's clear that this is real, and I confirm to you. And I've met with key people at the Pentagon that the ET presence is real, and you want to know more, and we're going to bring you more, and we're going to hold more hearings, and that's it. And then the next thing that's going to happen is that every politician in the country that's got a problem with this issue, meaning I didn't say this and I didn't say that, and I was part of the truth embargo, is going to throw the Pentagon right under the tank. In other words, it's not our fault. We wanted to tell you. My husband wanted to tell you. Carter wanted to tell you. But the Pentagon stopped it all cold. The Pentagon has run this embargo. They've prevented the presidents from going out. They're the problem. And the Pentagon does not see themselves as the problem. They see themselves as the defender of the nation. Hardworking people, not overly paid, who have been defending us against the Soviet threat for 70 years, dealing with the ET presence, unbelievably complex issue, national security, and we don't like the idea of having to take the rap and be the goat for this political maneuver. What to do? Very difficult problem. They couldn't take action out of the Pentagon. This would be, well, extremely bad idea. They couldn't head on to the New York Times and give them stories. They couldn't surreptitiously release classified information. They really couldn't do any of that. That would turn them into the bad guys. So how could they deal with this clearly developing situation? These are very smart people. They have really good computers. And they came up with a brilliant idea. And I say they, I'm referring to people inside the military intelligence complex, not the top people, not the officials. This was not an official action by the DOD or the CIA. This was a group of people of like-minded interests who felt they needed to take action to defend their employee, defend the issue. So they came up with this idea. What if we create an NGO, a non-governmental organization, or we support the creation of an NGO?
Right.
And what if the team of people that launch this NGO are all formal career members of the military intelligence complex? 3 CIA people, 1 Department of Defense DIA careerist, researchers that had worked in advanced complex projects, even a former director, associate director of the Skunk Works. This would represent, of course, the government contractor classified world. A superb group of highly credentialed heavy hitters who are, just as it happens, no longer working for the government anymore, except maybe an odd independent contract. In other words, they're now civilians and they're part of this new NGO. They can do things that we can't do without violating rules, laws, protocols, and so forth. Bold and risky, but they really didn't have a choice. And so they came up with this idea. As it happened, a very successful rock star by the name of Tom DeLonge, had a very similar idea, and he'd been trying to get through to them for a long time, talking and buttonholing people and trying to get their attention. And I'm speculating that what he wanted to do is something they wanted to do, and they needed a Tom DeLonge. And so I think perhaps to his surprise, but certainly because of his hard work and commitment to the issue, going back to when he was in school, they brought him in and made him the CEO. Why? Why was Tom DeLonge the CEO of the To the Stars Academy? A lot of people have asked that question. There is one very logical explanation. If you're going to create an NGO filled with CIA guys and DIA guys and government researchers into the paranormal and whatever else, and it's being run by one of your CIA guys, say Luis Elizondo, he's the CEO of this, the internet world will descend upon you, and they will claim it is an absolute black ops program. They will not believe it. They will not trust it. It will be almost impossible to get the public on your side easily. But what if we had a civilian, no security clearance, no history of working for the government, very well liked, with money to be able to get things underway, very strong connection to the millennial generation and their children. In other words, somebody that makes the thing look a little more civilian and a lot less government. And so that's what they did. It was convenient. It would have been very hard for them to reach out to other possible candidates that would have maybe served the same purpose, because in doing so, they would be revealing this plan to people who they don't even know that they have a plan. Tom had been on their case for a long time, wanting to help, wanting to do this. So it was very easy to bring him in, sign him up, and off they go. If they had reached out to a Michio Kaku or someone like that, they would have risked exposing the thing in advance, putting Michio in a very tough spot. And so it all came together. Mm-hmm. And they launched it. To do what? As I said, they had a problem. Clinton was going to disclose. But Clinton lost. And they had a new president. But the cat was out of the bag. Tom DeLonge had basically gone public. The emails were out from the Podesta's files. Everybody knew something was going on. A couple of names had been revealed that had to sort of step back into the MIC because they weren't supposed to be revealed. This was an unfortunate result of the WikiLeaks dump. Oh, right. Ultimately, they decided to go forward. Okay, they did. October 11, 2017. And okay, great. There it was, saw the website. I'm going, okay, this kind of confirms what I thought was happening. But what do you got? Show me, right? Is this just some, I don't know, post-career retirement deal to make some bucks and have a little fun, sell some books? I find that incredible to think, but is that what it is? What have you got? You know what they had? They trotted right over the New York Times and handed them two major stories, literally handed it to them. Leslie Kean wrote it. Blumenthal, the Pulitzer Prize winner, came on to give it gravitas. Arlene Cooper was part of it. She was the New York Times staffer. And out they go, December 16th, 2017. You know these stories very well.
Oh, yeah. And it got a lot of attention, and a lot of people are paying attention to this. And people who are new to this, who really never thought in a million years that UFOs are real, all because of this event.
Well, this program.
They realize, the program is great.
By the way, there have been over 700 articles written about the TTSA and the things that they've done and the reactions to the government to that and everything else. 700. And if someone wants to read all 700, they can go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org. Go to the menu, click on resources, slide on down to Print Media Archive. Click into there, go to the Print Media Archive from there, and then go to 2017, October 10, and you will see the first earmarked article in red regarding the TTSA. And then go forward chronologically and read all 700 up to the present time. When you finish reading all 700, you will be more knowledgeable than 99.9% of the people in the world on what is going down right now. All right? So the question then is, why did it generate the articles? Why has it triggered these cascading events? It's not complicated, okay? That team of people who, and they actually hinted about this, we have some confirmation of this, who we know were backed up by another group of people inside the MIC, mostly probably in the DOD, supporting them, covering for them. This wasn't a DOD project. The Secretary of Defense, I don't think even knew this was coming. And so they have the internal support, but it is a private group. Okay. We don't know who they are, and we don't know the origin story. But the New York Times figured that out immediately. So they, wait a minute. If there's a group inside the DOD that is helping clear the way and backing this project, then that means that the consensus towards ending the truth embargo has reached a significant milestone within the military intelligence complex itself. In other words, and I said this, I think that the week that it opened up, this is bad. I was in London, but I was tweeting from there. For the first time in the history of this issue, the military intelligence complex by proxy is leading the disclosure movement. Not me, not any of my other colleagues. And that is a milestone. That is the game changer. And when they deliver the articles to the New York Times, which the New York Times vetted thoroughly, witnesses, documents, everything, I assure you, heavily vetted. When that hits, that was a signal to the entire world. Journalism, academics, politicians, something profound has happened. We've crossed the Rubicon here, and you're going to have to decide what you're going to do. This thing is now moving forward. It is never going to go back. Too many millions of people worldwide know there's an extraterrestrial presence, and too many people, millions of people know that we know there's an extraterrestrial presence, and know that we know that they know there's an extraterrestrial presence. So this is it. And so everybody had to decide what to do, okay? The New York Times did its thing. And by the way, somebody who jumped the gun, or actually I think it was intentional, who knew what he was going to do before the To the Stars Academy launched in October of 2017 was a gentleman by the name of Robert Bigelow. And so even though, and he knew the TTSA existed, he knew that it was coming. He didn't say that, but he did give an interview on 60 Minutes, and you may recall that's when he told Laura Larson, the extraterrestrials are here. He told her that twice.
Yeah.
Extraterrestrials are here. And he's a billionaire who at the time still had a very long-term lucrative contract with NASA. So the message was clear. The TTSA people, as they came out, they couldn't say the extraterrestrials are here. They're every single one of them knows it because they have to operate within certain parameters. Remember, they have NDAs. They cannot reveal classified information. They have support within the DOD, so they can't just be running out talking ETs are here, or they will lose that backing. In other words, there's an agenda underway. They have to follow the agenda and stay between the lines, which they have, and I support that. But Bob Bigelow isn't on the TTSA. He doesn't have to stay between the lines, and so he just came out and said what they couldn't say in May of 2017. There's extraterrestrials here. He didn't get to be a billionaire by being an idiot or falling down rabbit holes. Okay,
right.
So what then? What's happened since then? Since those New York Times articles, is that people and agencies and politicians have been lining up with the inevitable thing that is coming. And what is that? What is coming, and what I believe was the agenda all along, the organization, the books, the movies, documentaries, the research they might do, all of that was in their mission statement, no problem. But that wasn't the agenda. That was something that could be very nice and valuable, could even make some money for people, and they needed that and do some cool things. But that wasn't the agenda. The agenda was this: launch it, get the articles out, and then move towards what absolutely has to happen is we have to have congressional hearings on the ET issue. And those hearings need to be broad, comprehensive, And once those hearings get underway in a relatively short amount of time, the President of the United States will be in a comfortable position to confirm the extraterrestrial presence, because the entire world will have seen the same evidence being testified on Capitol Hill under oath. And the president could come to the conclusion, well, I'm convinced, so I'm confirming. That is politically wise. It is a win for the president. The hearings are a win for the congressional chairs. It's a win for the committee members that make you pass the questions on. It's a win for the witnesses, and it's a win for the DOD. This is the way it has to be, which is why for 52 years we've been trying to get hearings. At least a half a dozen, maybe more attempts to get hearings. Because the one we had in '68 wasn't a real hearing. It was a one-day show thing with 4 legitimate witnesses. Thank you so much. Here's some nice parting gifts. And then they shut down Blue Books, destroyed the NICAP, and thought they were home free 52 years ago. Every attempt to get hearings since has been blocked cold, because they know that proper hearings on this issue ends the truth embargo. Okay, so I was pretty sure about that, but I was looking for confirmation. In other words, I was looking for, okay, what do I expect to see if I'm right about this agenda? Well, interestingly enough, aside from the fact that the Navy got on board, the Army got on board, and a lot of other people have got on board, which is all fine, and that's part of this process. What I was really looking for was this. The To the Stars Academy launched a television show called Unidentified on History Channel. Unidentified, Inside America's Secret UFO Investigation. 14 episodes over a period of, I don't know, about 7, 8 months. And those episodes were primarily about one thing: putting military witnesses in front of the American people on the History Channel to testify about what they knew and have seen, including the ones that came out as part of the Nimitz case that was revealed to the New York Times and others, and more. Some of them were even in silhouette, a little bit not ready, but they were in silhouette. I said, that's exactly what I expected to happen. And of course, by doing it with the History Channel, they're also laying the groundwork for more witnesses. And in fact, that's exactly what happened, because I learned later that because of the New York Times articles, because of those witnesses coming forward to the New York Times and on the Unidentified show, other military people who have had their own experiences felt it was now safe to come forward, and they started contacting Lou Elizondo. Now, let me be clear.
Yeah.
There are thousands of people, active or retired, military people, who have had engagements of one kind or another with ET phenomena. Thousands of them. And they all took oaths to defend the country and honor the Constitution, and they've kept their mouth shut. But over time, the activist movement has eroded the truth embargo little by little by little. And as you know, witnesses have come forward. An odd astronaut here, an odd astronaut there, a SAC base officer here, a SAC base officer there. But this is totally new. They saw Fravor giving interviews all over. No problem. No problem at all. They saw Day, Kevin Day, no problem. These people were talking, and there was no problem. So that didn't mean they were just suddenly going to give a news conference, but they contacted Lou, I think, to find out, Lou, I've had an experience. Can we talk? This went on for 2 years. Okay.
Yeah, it's obvious that they were allowed to do so.
Well, no, they felt it was safe to do so. The government's not going to be sending them out emails saying, you can talk now. Oh, no, they can't do that. They concluded it was safe because Lou Elizondo and this project lowered the bar. Okay, so that was happening, but that's not enough. I needed to see something else, something very important. And of course, that's exactly what happened. We learned primarily, though I think Lou was involved, but primarily Christopher Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, long career, on the Hill, over at the Pentagon, credentials up the yin-yang, the perfect person to be leading this agenda, had been taking witnesses, remember the witnesses, up on the Hill to chat with members of Congress. Briefings, particularly committee chairs. And I don't mean the Agricultural Committee, right? I'm talking the right committees, okay? Intel, Armed Services, Oversight. He may have hit every single one of them. Now, we have that confirmation. A number of committee members of Congress have confirmed they've had the meetings, but not the content. These are off-the-record meetings, private, preparatory, okay? In other words, filling them in, and of course, what's better than being able to hear some of these witnesses? I noted that with great interest. Then in July of 2019, I learned the president had been briefed. And that's when I got really interested. And I did what I had to do to relocate back to Washington from California. I arrived in September of 2019. It took a while to get my act together. I was able to get an office next to the White House and get set up to run, pedal real fast. And then the COVID hit, and my gallbladder decided it would take early retirement. So things kind of dragged out. Okay. But what we learned, of course, was that meetings had been going on the Hill probably for a year and a half, which means he had enough time to set up 10, 20, 30 meetings on the Hill. Not everybody. Committee chairs, key members. All right. The ranking member of the Senate Intel Committee under Trump was Mark Warner. He confirmed that they had a hearing. I mean, they had a briefing from witnesses. The chairman of the committee during the last administration was Marco Rubio. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So in June of 2020, again, it's all going where I expected it to go. So I'm just telling, this is exactly what's confirming the agenda to me. Marco Rubio decided that he needed to get on the disclosure train, along with the Navy and the Army and a number of other people that have come forward. I'll go into them later if you want to know. And he made a very slick political move. He's the chairman of the Intel Committee, and therefore he's obviously the one that's directing the new their defense intelligence appropriations bill. And he possibly with Warner was probably involved here, but I think this was Rubio's deal. Warner, I think, would have gone along with it. They put language in the comment section of the bill requesting, not demanding under law, but requesting, which is a big deal from the Intel Committee, that a coincidentally just created entity at the Navy, the ONIs, created a UAP task force. Wow. Okay. That they, along with some other agencies, put together some reports to give the Intel Committee a much more current understanding of what these agencies are doing and responding to this phenomena. All right. That has never happened before. And he put it in the bill with a 180-day deadline from the time the bill was signed, knowing the thing wasn't going to be signed for months. It didn't get signed until December, which pushed the deadline into June, which is well after the election. And anyway, Rubio wasn't running for a re-election last year. So he was totally safe. But did he get a whole lot of press about this? Has he gotten a lot of coverage? Has he gotten praise for, wow, what a bold thing to do? He put himself right in front of the disclosure activist movement with zero political risk. And I said, okay, now we're getting really serious, okay? And then one more thing happened that I expected, which just locks it down solid. A couple of weeks ago, 3, 4, we learned that Elizondo and Mellon and another very key player of that initial 10, Steve Justice, the former associate director of Skunkworks, which, in case, well, you know this, Skunkworks was one of a number of contractors assigned to work on extraterrestrial re-engineering of technology, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ben Rich has alluded to this. I mean, hell, what the hell? It's not even a secret hardly, and he was there. Now, he's kept in the background, but he's critical to going forward. All three of these gentlemen stepped out of the To the Stars Academy. They simply left. They're no longer part of that organization. A lot of people said, oh, they got fired. Oh, something. No. They had to step out. Why? Because Elizondo has been gathering the witnesses, almost exclusively military witnesses, preparing them one way or another to testify before Congress. Mellon has been briefing and prepping, I guess you could say, key members of Congress and committee chairs who, the committee chairs, by the way, there's no hearing unless the committee chair wants it. And so you have to get them on board. Obviously, Rubio is on board, right? But next comes the negotiations to put them together and do them. This is work in the trench, in a sense.
Okay.
All right? And these men will be critical to ensuring that these hearings get underway properly, the right witnesses are in the right place, and so forth. They could not do that as members of the To the Stars Academy. In terms of briefing the Congress, that was okay. But you get down to the real deal where you're going to create hearings that will be seen by more people than have watched any political event of any time in all of history. You need to be an individual. You need to be representing yourself, not an organization that has an entertainment division and a very knowledgeable rock guy as the CEO, rock star, and so forth. No, you have to be apart from that. And so they stepped out.
Now that makes sense.
So where are we? Here's where we are. Next up is congressional hearings, multiple committees. The Senate and House intel will be initial, then it'll probably branch out to the armed services. The witnesses may very well be nothing but military people, all right? The basis for the hearings will be national security, which it has to be. You're going to take a political risk on something like that. So there better be a pretty solid, grounded reason why you're holding that hearing, national security, which, by the way, the national security aspect of the UAPs and the ET presence has been put in play for 3 solid years now. It's out there. Everybody understands it. Now, so military witnesses, national security, and the only question now is, when do they start? When do they start? And this is where it gets complicated. I believe, and I will continue to assert until any of these gentlemen get in touch with me and correct me, in which case I will correct myself, that the plan was not to launch the TTSA in October of 2017. It was to launch it in the transition period after Clinton won the election, late November, December. Take those stories down to the New York Times, get those things in the New York Times in January before she even gets into the White House, and be already out in front of the issue and ahead of the curve before she can even take action. Because there was no way she was going to address the issue in depth to any media while she was in transition and while Trump was still president. She would put them off. And they would agree to that. Hey, you're going to be president. We'll ask the questions. But remember, there'd been 400 news articles about her connection to the ET issue and her husband and Podesta and all that. So there was no way they were going to go away. And so what happens? She takes the White House. The press immediately descends down there. Hey, but what about that statement to the Conway Daily Sun? What about the Area 51? What about UAPs? What about? And she, okay. Meanwhile, the New York Times has just published 2 major articles outing the Nimitz case. Disclosure under Hillary Clinton. First year, probably no later than late spring or summer. They've only been exposed from October to 7 months. Then they raised $25 million, not $2.5 million. They got a great organization. They got the hearings. All's right with the world. But that's not the way it worked out. And so they had to take a much longer route, 4 years in the wilderness, hung out there, no net, being attacked from all sides. This is not true. That's not true. You weren't this. You weren't that. You guys are black ops, whatever the hell. Trying to work the issue and work with the people in the UFO community and so forth. Very tough job. That Elizondo basically was the guy who had to take that on, and he's worked himself into a frazzle. I mean, the last time I saw him on an interview, he looked like he'd just gotten over COVID or something. I mean, he looked awful. So tough road, and 2 outcomes. Trump could have won which would have created one set of problems for them. Biden wins, creates another. But
well, let me ask you something about Trump. I mean, he's had a couple of interviews where he's been asked the question, what do you think he knows, and why hasn't this occurred? I really did expect that Trump would come out with this. He would disclose it. But, because he just grabs the bull by the horns and does whatever he wants. What's going on with him?
Well, that was the argument for. I'll give you the argument against. Trump knows nothing about the issue, ever. Okay, nothing, zero. When he arrived, all kinds of little things popped up, little something here, little something there, a lot of executive actions. He could essentially do anything he wanted to do. And he would do things that would get attention, show action, what have you. Not surprisingly, remember, in the 2 years prior to him taking office, 400 articles were written about the ET issue, connecting it to Clinton. So, I mean, it wasn't like he didn't realize something was going on there. And other people did too. And so a few people, Kudlow, his son, Tucker Carlson, popped a small UFO ET question at him, which he sort of just deflected. He didn't say much. All right.
Right.
And we know that he got briefed. We think it was probably the Nimitz pilots. That's not a briefing from the CIA on the entire USAP programs dealing with the ET issue for 70 years. That's a little meeting with the pilots.
Right.
And he didn't really react to that. But there's a bigger issue. I speculate here. I believe that the Department of Defense's position on Donald Trump was such that he was a significant potential danger to the country. And they did not want to facilitate that. And there is plenty of evidence to that. Go look, it's there. They managed him. And so the idea that they would do anything to cooperate with the White House administration regarding the UFO issue was zero. And so he didn't have the DOD backing. He didn't have the knowledge. He didn't have the interest. He did do one thing that got some attention, and that was he popped the Space Force out there.
Yeah, that was a little small thing he did. I mean, that you just have to speculate. Why is the Space Force out there? What is it protecting us from?
Well, let's back it up a little bit. The Space Force was a shiny object. In other words, another branch of the military, and by the way, here's 20, 30 billion, whatever the funding was involved. The Pentagon can't say no. The conservative and the right wing is, hey, great. More money for the Pentagon, another service. So he knew it would be support for the idea. Okay, they didn't want it. The DOD did not want a Space Force. I assure you, they have had a classified space program for decades. They're able to do whatever they need to do. NASA participates in it. It doesn't attract a lot of attention. It doesn't attract activists. It's not a problem because there is a whole lot of potential problems with the issue of weapons in space. By creating the Space Force, drew all that attention, raised the specter of militarism in space without even talking about ETs. But hey, there wasn't much it could do. And it had a lot of money attached. But if you go back and you read the articles and you study what happened, they slow rolled it. They just tried to downplay it. They came up with these ridiculous uniforms. They came up with a ridiculous logo. They sort of did what they could to just keep it from getting too serious. That's my view. I'm open to other interpretations. And so nothing came from it. But it is now a problem. I can assure you the Space Force is a problem for the Biden administration. Just wait, right? So nothing there. Wasn't going to happen. Okay. So from the standpoint of just basic fundamentals, without getting into hyper partisan politics, I've been around Washington a long time. I can do the math. A Biden victory and a Democratic Senate was the best they could have hoped for to get this agenda completed. Why? Well, several reasons. One, consistency of power. The White House, the House, and the Senate were all Democratic controlled. That makes it a lot easier to move forward in a complex issue, particularly if that complex issue is nonpartisan. The ET presence is nonpartisan, I assure you. And it's seen that way. And so it means that you can address it without immediately getting into a partisan Dem versus Republican thing, right? It's extraterrestrials here, okay? What's going on? Okay, so it's a safe play, which is good. But it's even safer if you've got unitary government. All right, but there's another reason. Unitary government means that all of the chairs of the committees in the House and Senate are the same party. And so you don't have a situation where you're trying to get these extraordinary hearings underway, say, in the House, but the Republican-controlled Senate chairs go, we don't want anything to do with that. Screw you. It's ridiculous, silly, whatever. And so what? Now you're in this. Not the case. The hearings will start both House and Senate. And so that was their best outcome. And things have proceeded pretty well. But history is a tough ocean to sail, particularly if you're an activist. I've sailed that ocean for 25 years, and I've studied the lives of other activists and movements that have sailed that ocean. History is powerful. It dwarfs our hopes and dreams. And so if you're out in the Pacific and the currents are generally moving from northwest to southwest in a counterclockwise direction, and the prevailing winds are going that way, then that's where you go. You go with the current and you go with the wind. If you try to turn around, if you try to sail in the opposite direction with the current going the other way and the wind blowing the other way, the chances are you're going nowhere. You may even go backwards. But it gets worse because you're out in the ocean. And storms can come up at any moment and capsize your boat, throw you off course. That is the activist path. And so down through history, major developments on the brink of happening were suddenly just capsized. So we've had that problem before in this issue. We have it now. What's the storm? Worst pandemic in the history of the human race that we know of. Shutting down economies, throwing turmoil into governments, killing millions of people, slamming the economy. Yeah, that's a storm. And then we have a political circumstance in America we've never seen. Not since the Civil War. I mean, I've never seen it in my lifetime. Nothing like it.
Right.
I'm 2 blocks from the White House. I was kind of paying attention when about 1,000 people went down and pretty much broke into the Capitol building. Insurrection. Wow. And then the bipartisan, hyperpartisan politics is still inflamed by certain developments during the campaign and since. And so consequently, this town is still extremely unsettled. And so the idea that you could pop hearings out, no, it's been delayed. Now, the partisanship is going to settle down pretty soon because certain things are about to happen which are going to make some of it moot. Oh, it'll create anger. Hell will be raised, screams, and so forth. But certain things are going to take place, bills are going to get passed, and there's going to be less to fight about. That'll calm down. The COVID thing is all about the vaccination schedule. If the vaccination schedule continues to escalate, we did 4 million vaccines, I think, yesterday or the day before, then the situation regarding the pandemic will mitigate soon. And so at this point, the soonest I think we can hold hearings, the soonest, is June. That's the soonest. So unless the variants take over and we get an increase in death rates or something happens to the vaccine distribution, we have a realistic prospect of hearings on the ET issue in June of this year.
Would that be after the release of the documents?
Interestingly enough, again, it's interesting, but yeah, if that time frame works out because of the two variables I mentioned, it would virtually coincide with the requested release of documents from multiple agencies. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing. Okay, here's why it's a good thing. Obviously, if hearings are underway or about to get underway, witnesses are being lined up, tickets are being bought, and suddenly we get a substantial amount of actual material, new material. In other words, a reasonable effort to at least show cooperation. I assure you, they're not going to be dumping the USAP programs out in front of the Intel committee. Then that just dovetails with the coming hearings and just increases the heat even more. It will be very helpful. It will help to ensure that not only do we get information, but the public is seeing transparency that they have been wanting for a long time, which will increase trust. All is well. Here's the downside. All these agencies have got a 70-year history of hiding the ball, missing documents, refusing to respond to FOIAs, undermining research, redacting. 70 years of that. So what if opponents of the entire agenda that was launched by the TTSA and what it means and where it's going somehow get control of the situation at ONI or maybe some of the other agencies, and we end up getting a bunch of nothing burgers come June, and the hearings haven't started yet? That gives a lot of people in Congress an excuse to say, we don't need to do this. Let's obviously there's nothing there. I mean, they didn't give us any. There's nothing there. Well, why do we have in these hearings? That would be a very bad thing. Okay, so I am pushing and will continue to push. I'm done 60 interviews. I got 8 more scheduled. I'll probably do 200 interviews by June, easy. We need to get the hearings right away. In other words, get the hearings before anything is delivered from these agencies. Because once the hearings are underway, those agencies have no choice but to not just provide material, provide a lot of material, because they cannot risk being outside of the issue when the testimony is coming down in front of tens, if not hundreds of millions of people watching these hearings day to day, and they show up with nothing burgers? No. So it pretty much locks it in. But what can I say? The pandemic and political developments are pushing this thing forward now, which may explain why both Elizondo and Mellon and Rubio have alluded to the possibility of an extension of the deadline. Remember, it's not a legal deadline. It's we want them by this time or we'll be very unhappy with you. I mean, that's what it is, the Intel committee.
Okay.
Extend it. Why? Because if they're wise, and if the agencies are giving a response to Rubio and others that we're gonna give you legit stuff, they see the value of having that material coincide more with hearings. And so if hearings can't make it in June, let's extend it a month or two. Hearings will start in August, and then those agencies will jump on. Win-win. It's all good. So, okay. But I assure you, I'm paying attention to all of that. And if I start to smell a rat, I'll be coming back on your show. Right? And we'll talk smelly rats. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So there you have it, Margie. That's it.
Wow.
It's. I mean, I know you got questions, but that is my case for why the truth embargo's days are coming to a close.
Well, it's important to keep this narrative going, and you've been the biggest proponent, for 25 years now. How do you keep going with this? I mean, personally, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. How do you do it?
Well, money helps, but there's been very little of that, with the exception of the citizen hearing on disclosure. That was well funded and important project. Some of that helped me with the initiative, the political initiative in 2016. But no, I've had supporters that have kept me at least in the game. Okay. Right now, enough, plus with the stimulus money and so forth, that I'm solid all this year. I have no concerns about having to in any way disrupt my situation, my office and so forth, which is 2 blocks from the White House, and it's set up as a studio. So eventually I'll be actually interviewing people in the National Press Building in studio. And my podcast is the only podcast on the exopolitics stuff ever out of Washington, D.C. So, but my supporters are keeping me in the game. They're not keeping me in 2-bedroom condos or Teslas or anything like that. I assure you, it's just enough to keep me in the game. I do have plans. There's some things in the works which may impress some people out there who may think, well, maybe we ought to step in and back PRG. It's paid its dues, and if that happens, it happens. So, but I'm comfortable. I was able to isolate myself on the pandemic. I did not get sick. I've been vaccinated, and so I'm blessed. I don't need
great.
boats and cars and planes and expensive suits, I assure you. But eventually, particularly if we get disclosure, PRG is going to be aggressively trying to raise money, because that's when the really interesting work begins. This has just been about getting the government to end a lie for 70 some years, right?
Well, I'm also wondering, the ETs are here, obviously. Are they waiting to make a mass showing, if you will, until our government admits that they're here?
I believe so. That is how I don't put it quite that way, but yes, I agree with you. That is, I've been saying this for some time, that my best, without the ETs sending me something, an email or something like that, I believe that their agenda, aside from the work they're doing here, they're doing work here, right? They're not tourists. They're not just hanging out to chill, right? This is work, and
what kind of work are they doing?
Well, you know about it. Sure.
Yeah, but I need my listeners to know.
At the core of their work is contact with humans. The contact phenomena. It's real. Is that going to be in the hearings? No, it's not. That will come up eventually in post-disclosure hearings, but it's not going to come up initially. But the work that they're doing with humans is almost certainly at the core of the work that they do. But they're also observing, and they're affecting us. Okay? So when they get seen flying over aircraft carriers or over military bases, if they hover over our SAC bases and turn our missiles off, when they drop crop circles year after year in the UK fields, and they're also working, well, they need materials for their work, and they get a lot of that from our animals. Okay, cattle particularly. So this refers to work that they're doing. I think genetics is a big thing. So, but in addition to the work, which I think they have been doing off and on forever, there is a very significant new piece to their presence. And that, of course, is what began in 1947, after we dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At that point, based on their assessment of our geopolitical situation, our technological situation in terms of trends, curves, and so forth, that they knew, probably from previous experience, it's not their first rodeo, that it was time to change the engagement, the rules of engagement. And thus began the modern era of sightings and sightings and sightings and phenomena and this and that and everything else that the researchers have been trying to keep up with. Why? Well, if your goal is to get into a direct relationship with the planet, not like 5,000 years ago, because this isn't 5,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, right? I'm talking about to get informal, direct engagement openly of a fully advanced global civilization with weapons of mass destruction and high technology and 7 billion people. Right. This isn't 5,000 years ago. There's a good way to go about it, a bad way to go about it. Ideally, assuming that you are well-meaning, right, and generally not destructive, you would like the civilization in question to become aware of your presence, to sort of see something's going on, and ultimately acknowledge it formally. Meaning, because there's 7 billion people here, and most of them are busy, in order for it to be acknowledged and be understood, the governments need to acknowledge it. They need to confirm it, right? We
Makes
are,
sense.
yeah. So what's that? That's disclosure. You got to have disclosure. There has to be formal acknowledgement so that the planet knows this is true. What's next? They could force that disclosure anytime they want to, but they have chosen not to. But their very presence and actions have certainly made it easier for the activists and the researchers to keep this issue alive and drive it forward. If the ET craft were only seen once every 5 years, if there was no contact going on with humans, no memories being suddenly emerging out of their subconscious or under hypnosis, if they weren't hovering over nuclear bases and turning our missiles off, I assure you, this truth embargo could go on a long time. But they are making it virtually impossible to keep it going indefinitely. And so I believe they have facilitated the process leading to disclosure. There's time, and I'll get back to that. From their point of view, there's time. From our point of view, a little more skeptical about the time, but whatever. And so eventually we disclose. The world knows. Everybody knows. Now, there's a lot of cleaning up to do. So they disclose in June of this year. Our president discloses. The rest of the world's nations will follow suit within weeks. And thus begins all new hearings. Not just in the US, but hearings in just about all of the republics that are willing to have hearings, parliaments and so forth, Canada, UK, France, name it. Witnesses from their countries and military will be testifying. And that the hearings will expand into more and more areas. And in addition to that, wow, the academics, the big corporations, the money players, the billionaires are all going to sweep down on this thing and try to learn everything they can, get an edge, get an angle, start companies, ET this, ET that. It will be pretty intense, but it will be a learning process. And over the next year or two after disclosure, the world will be drenched in ET-related information about what the researchers knew, what they know now, what the government has done, what the government knows, and certain classified information will be released, and we'll get schooled. And we've done it before. Hell, the internet turns up. Nobody knows what the hell it is, right? And we got a personal computer. Nobody knows how to work it. And so basically the whole world trained itself in the internet and the social media and computers, and personal computers, by basically driving millions of tech support people out of their minds. We self-educated. We became autodidacts on some of the most important tech developments in history and educated the planet. This will be even faster.
And it'll be a whole new world.
Now, after 2 years of that, is anybody going to be shocked that, the government announces that as of the last Wednesday, we have been in formal communication with 3 of the 5 species, and we're exchanging, communication, and there are developments, and we'll be keeping you informed about that. Are people going to panic? Oh my God! They've known for 2 years the ETs are here.
Right.
They're all going to be sitting there for 2 years waiting for that to happen, and when it does, it's getting fantastic.
I think that's a good assessment of what will happen, for sure. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and I'm going to have to ask you to come back.
I insist.
Yeah, absolutely. How can people find you, find your website and your blog and your podcast?
Podcast is at disclosurewire.org. And it's housed on YouTube, but there's a portal into my website. And then paradigmresearchgroup.org. If you go to resources, print media archive, you can read all the articles I've talked about. If you go to issues, to the Stars Academy media, you can read, I've got over 170, 80 video clips relating to the TTSA, including their presentations. You can subscribe at the website. It's free to the newsletter. And I please follow Paradigm Research Group on Twitter and on Facebook.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much, Steve, for being on the show
Margie.
today. And I will have to talk about getting you back on very soon. Thank you.
There's much to talk about. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Unnext News Podcast with Margie Kay. Any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or its content without express written permission from Margie Kay is strictly prohibited. The Unnext News Podcast, in direct cooperation with the internet website margiekay.com.